Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's episode, we are learning all about franchising your business, franchising a business, but we're also going to learn the good and the bad when it comes to franchising. And here to educate me and you, we have Laura Rolfe. So, how are you, Laura?
Hello, Crystal. So happy to be on your show today. I am excellent.
Great. I'm excited to have you on because, and I don't know if I've told you this in the times that we've spoken previously, Laura, but you are the first person to come on and educate us about franchising.
Well, very excited to help educate you and your listeners about franchising. Ironically, I've been in franchising my whole life, but I didn't know it. So
Wow.
my parents owned a beer distributorship when I was a child, which is a form of franchising. But it took me becoming a franchise consultant 5 years ago when my dad's like, yeah, the beer distributorship is a form of franchising, Laura. So I had a little education when I first became a consultant as well.
Excellent. Well, Laura, tell us, where in the world are you?
I am sitting in Chandler, Arizona right now. It's beautiful and sunny. But the beauty of being a consultant is I can travel and be just about anywhere. I was in Denver a week ago, meeting with lots of different franchise businesses, enjoying some services. But currently I'm in Chandler.
All right. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for being on the podcast. So, you've told us a little bit as far as your franchising roots started when you were a child. And I guess you just gave yourself the title 5 years ago. So, what made you decide to go ahead and make it official and join in the franchising career space 5 years ago?
As I mentioned, my parents were beer distributors growing up. I spent 25 years working in nonprofit for some well-known, nationally recognized nonprofits.
Mhm.
COVID impacted that nonprofit world. And when I was in fundraising, I worked with multiple well-known franchise brands like Massage Envy, Harley Davidson, Budweiser, Burger King, McDonald's, etc. When I found myself at a crossroads, like, do I want to continue to go have a W-2 job and work for somebody else in fundraising, which I'm very good at, or do I want to look at business ownership for myself? I went down the path of exploring franchising for myself. I looked at some senior care options, home services, a couple of other brands. And my franchise consultant suggested that because I had been changing lives through my fundraising, I might want to consider franchise consulting, where I continue to impact the lives of others by helping them become business owners through franchising.
Laura, can you give us a definition of franchising? What is franchising?
Franchising is an opportunity for aspiring entrepreneurs to be in business for themselves, but never by themselves. So, franchising is a proven business model that has systems, operations, HR manuals, marketing plans already vetted and put into place, and then can be replicated in any market across the United States. The success rate in franchising is much higher than if you were to invest in starting a business from scratch. You already have the name, the marketing, everything you need to, like a business in a box, ready to implement in your market and build and grow a successful business. You can lean into the support from the franchisor, who is going to provide coaching, training, guidance. You can also converse with other owners of that same business model. Chances are that they've had similar challenges or celebrations that you'll face as a franchisee. I love franchising because the success rate is amazing in franchising.
What area of business would you say is the best area as far as franchising?
So there are 5 industries that I love currently. They all seem to be more recession resistant and inflation resistant than some of the other industries. Those are home services. People are staying in their homes longer and they're like, gosh, I'd like to freshen this place up with new paint on the walls, or maybe their home's aging and they need a new roof, or they want new landscaping. So home services is a great niche. Typically, those are home-based businesses. Many of them have subcontractor models, so you're not hiring a bunch of employees, and the net returns on those businesses are terrific. We've also seen pet care is exploding. A lot of millennials are having fur babies instead of kids. And those fur kids, dogs in particular, need grooming, training, specialty treats, bougie accessories, great fluffy beds, etc. So I love the pet care industry. It also helps that I have my own fur babies at home.
Yes.
And my kids have fur babies, so I have grand fur babies, not grandkids. Um, Senior care continues to grow with 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day. They want to age in place. So there's lots of different senior care models that are also have great rewards for supporting the senior community, as well as in the profitability. Um, Commercial cleaning and residential cleaning are also growing businesses, particularly as we're seeing more businesses returning back to offices. And then I love alternative healthcare. So that space, people are looking at ways to improve their longevity, look and feel better. So that's another space that I like. There's many others as well, but those are the key ones that I tend to focus on and be my niche.
Laura, I thought you were going to say fast food restaurants.
No. People are like, I want to own the next Chick-fil-A or McDonald's. And I'm like, well, do you have $1 million laying around to invest in a McDonald's? And it's going to take 5 years before you're cash flow positive. Or a Chick-fil-A has a very stringent discovery process. And I went through it myself because I had so many clients interested in Chick-fil-A. It's only $10,000 to invest in Chick-fil-A, but you don't own any of the assets. Chick-fil-A owns the building, everything inside of the building. You are essentially buying yourself a fancy job to operate Chick-fil-A full-time. You have to be full-time in the business. You can't be passive in a Chick-fil-A. So fast food is really not my niche. There's a lot of, there are a few food restaurants that I really like that I've placed some candidates with. But even some well-recognized brands we're seeing are struggling. And so I tend to focus more on the other industries that we chatted about.
If someone is wanting to get into the franchise business, someone like myself wanting to get into the franchise business, what questions should I be asking? What should I be looking for before I take that leap?
Well, I think that is one of the biggest reasons to work with a franchise consultant, because the franchise consultant is going to learn more about you, the client, your background, your interests, how much you have available to invest in a franchise, and then really guide you through that discovery process. I provide my candidates with a list of questions to ask the franchisor. You'll also have an opportunity to work with current franchisees, ask them any questions you like. And then the final step in the discovery process is meeting with the franchise team that's going to support you. So a couple of highlights that we during the initial phase talk about is what is your motivation? Why do you want to get into business ownership? What's driving you to become an entrepreneur and explore this? Is your spouse on board? You want to make sure that your family is supportive of you and they're going to have a different perspective on business ownership than you are. So that's, I think, an important step. And then how are you going to fund your franchise? I have several funders that we work with that we can explore funding opportunities on the best way to, just like you would pre-qualify for buying a house. You kind of want to get pre-qualified and know I'm not going to show $1 million franchise system to somebody who has $50,000 cash liquidity to invest. But there are different ways that you can invest in a franchise you like. We'll look at what's called a franchise disclosure document that has 23 items in it. Doesn't matter if you're McDonald's, Batteries Plus Bulbs, Cycle Bar, home service business. Every franchise, which is governed by the Federal Trade Commission, must review those 23 items with their candidates. And that will tell us a lot. How much am I going to invest initially in the franchise? How much is this going to cost me? Who gets paid what? The franchisor gets a franchise fee. You're going to pay for a build out if it's a brick and mortar. You're going to have marketing, insurance. Perhaps you need some technology like computers and phones, which are basic technologies for the business. So it's itemized. So you know how much you're going to invest. There's royalties and ongoing ad funds. So what does that look like for you as a franchisee? So we can create a budget. And then how much can I make? Like everybody wants to know, how much can I make in this business?
That's the important question.
Yeah, so that's earnings claims are also listed in most franchise disclosure documents. Item 19 of that disclosure document will tell you what the system-wide averages are, and then some will break it down by location. So we'll get into that with the franchisor. You'll also want to learn about the culture. Is it a good fit? Some are very involved. Like I did a podcast this week with a franchise system that is very family focused and family oriented and has strong cultural values to support their franchisees. And then there are other really recognizable, well-known names that have thousands of franchisees that you may you're going to have a coach and you're going to have ongoing support, but you might not have the cell phone of the franchisor, the founder, the CEO. So, kind of what is a good cultural fit? And then when we're looking at questions for franchisees, like the people who already bought into the business, you want to know, are they happy? What keeps them up at night? Business is hard, whether you're a franchisee or an independent business owner. So this is the time to really get into the meat and potatoes of what is going well with the franchise system. What do you wish they would do differently? How much are you making at your location? Do you have problems hiring employees? Do you feel like you get the support that you need? And so there's many different questions. So I provide an opportunity of some questions, and then we brainstorm some additional questions that a candidate might want to ask throughout the process.
In your years as being a franchise consultant, Laura, what are maybe the top 1 or 2, 3 mistakes that you see franchisees make?
Well, I think you need to be well-funded for your business because it does take time to get cash flow positive. So we talk about that during the discovery phase. And then I think a lot of people too think that they can have a passive investment where they don't really have to put in the work. They're going to hire a manager who's going to run the day-to-day for them. But you do need to have a good understanding of your business, and you need to if you're looking at a semi-passive, which is maybe 10 to 20 hours a week, and as a franchisee, you do need to understand the business model, because your GM might decide to leave and go pursue something else, and then you're stuck with a business that doesn't have somebody operating it. So we talk about different business ownership types and the pros and cons. It's a much faster launch if you are an owner operator involved in your business in the day-to-day and the operations. That doesn't mean that you're going to be painting walls if you have a painting franchise, or grooming dogs if you have a grooming franchise. We want somebody who's going to not be in the business. You want to work on the business, be the mayor of your town, do tons of networking, let people know that you're in business and you're the business to use when people need your services. So the third thing would be, just making sure that you're building a big business. You want to be an empire builder mentality rather than working on things that are going to maybe stall your growth as a franchisee.
What are some of the advantages of owning a franchise or getting into the franchise business?
Well, if you're good at following systems, we find that our military are great franchisees. That any of us who've had a job before, we have to follow the systems of our employer and what the rules are and what our role is. So if you're good at following systems, you can make a great franchisee. I do think that aspiring entrepreneurs, people who can make decisions, believe in themselves. You got to believe in yourself. You can't be hesitant, and certainly fear is going to come into play, but you got to bet on yourself and go all in business, I believe. And then if you believe in what you're doing, like there's more than 4,000 franchise opportunities available. So lots of different choice. So, I like to guide people to making the right choice for them, so they're investing in the right business. I also like to help talk about what is your exit strategy. You might just be looking at getting into business, but what is your exit strategy? Are you going to own this forever until you retire? Are you building a saleable asset? Are you going to pass it down and involve your children in the business? So all great questions to start thinking about before you even invest in the franchise business. I want to make sure that my franchisees, the people that I've worked with, I've gotten to know during the discovery process, I stay in touch with, and I want to see them launch and be super successful in their business journey.
Laura, do you think someone should get into the franchise business, like go into that without or can they, is my question. Can someone, or do you recommend, I'm thinking out loud here, trying to figure out the correct way to ask this question. Do you recommend someone getting into the franchise business without having a franchise consultant? I mean, I know it's possible, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you certainly can, but there's choice overload. So what a lot of people don't realize, if you go on the internet and you start searching for franchises, many franchise consultants are advertising particular brands out there. And so you may inquire about 10 different brands. I did this. And I have 10 different franchise consultants reaching out, representing those brands. So the waters got really, really muddied. And so I find myself, I feel like I'm a pretty savvy person. I've been in operations and marketing and people management for most of my career, but I didn't know franchising very well. So having a franchise consultant, most franchise consultants don't charge a fee. So why not lean in and have an expert that's going to save you time and money to find the right franchise that's going to help you maybe find brands that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of. A good example, I have personal friends who were interested in either a Chick-fil-A or a UPS store, and I asked them why. And I asked them what their goals were, what were they trying to accomplish through business ownership. And it was to create wealth and replace a six-figure salary. And so I presented some other options that I felt might better align with replacing that six-figure salary, and presented some things that initially they're like, I'm not sure, but they ended up investing in a roofing business and are, excelling. So they never would have thought of, we're going to be roofers. Right. Well, you're not going to be roofers. You're going to own a sales and marketing company that happens to be a roofing company.
Yes.
And so those are some of the advantages. Also connecting with resources. If you're looking to fund your franchise, people think that they can just go down to their local bank and get a SBA loan. Well, that may be true, but it can be very frustrating going to a big bank and they say that they can help you, and then you find out 4 or 5 months later that they won't fund your business because you don't have a background in roofing as
Uh,
this example. But if you work with a franchise funder, they know which banks understand that franchising is a proven business model. And while the franchisee doesn't have experience in that particular um, business model, they have other experience that's very applicable to their success as a business owner. And so I'll connect people with a franchise funder that their likelihood of success can be anywhere from 98% if they fit certain criteria of credit score, cash liquidity, etc. Much higher percentage, much shorter time. Um, Other advantages are, I can connect you with franchise attorney. You don't want a divorce attorney as an
right.
example reviewing a franchise agreement.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense. So if you have a family attorney or an estate attorney, they're not specialists in franchising. So like I wouldn't go to the dentist if I broke my ankle. Same with attorneys. You wouldn't go to a certain type of attorney to help you review an agreement. So lots of different reasons why I feel that why not lean into an expert. You are an expert to the listeners in what you're doing now. And so if you're looking to transfer your skills into business ownership, have a franchise consultant guide you in that. And I think you'll be much happier with your investment once you get to the end.
Why are franchise businesses proven? And I know it's not 100%, but why are most franchise business proven success models? I've heard you say that a couple times throughout this podcast.
So the business every business starts with the first location. Dairy Queen, Yoga Six, everybody starts with that first location. And somebody like came up with the concept, they built it, they grew it. And when they're ready to franchise, then they are looking at all of the systems that they've already put into place that has made that first location successful, and then they make it replicatable so they've already made the mistakes. Every business owner's made mistakes,
Hmm.
and so they've learned from that, and so they can teach how to turnkey operate that particular business, share any times they stubbed their toe along the way, and so helping future owners of that business model be successful. And then also new franchisees, they are going to have a business success coach dedicated to their onboarding to have a successful launch. And then there's going to be things that arise along the way. And isn't it nice to have an expert in the franchisor who's likely faced some of those similar problems in the past, help you solve them quickly, because time is money and you want to solve things and move in a positive direction quickly. If a marketing strategy isn't working in your particular market, you want to tweak it and change it before you spend too much money down a path of something that's not working, and reassess and move in a different direction to marketing efforts that are working. And how many employees do you hire? So all
Right.
different systems and proven things that just make it much simpler to invest in a franchise than and the franchisor, they want to see you succeed because they
Yes.
do ask you to pay royalty, which is so you're tied to each other's success. So I say they're the franchisor is like a silent business partner in your business, and those royalties are the best investment you're going to make because they're going to help the franchisor create new revenue streams for your
Mhm.
business. They're going to fund your business coach that's going to be available as you build and grow your business. It's going to be bringing on other resources or franchisees that are going to build a bigger, better brand and benefit you as a franchisee.
What does, and I want to stay on this, the vein of marketing. How important is marketing and branding for a franchise company?
Well, I think it's critical to the success. If people don't know about you, then they're not going to use your services, whether you're a dog washing company or a painter or a landscape business. If they don't know about you, they're not going to find you. So
Yeah.
marketing and targeted marketing is really important. So if you're a home services business, Who are your referral partners going to be? Is it going to be the realtor who, I don't know about you, but I contact my realtor if I need a painter, or I have a problem with um, my kitchen faucet or something. I'm going to say, hey, Kathy, do you
Right.
have a plumber that I can use, because she's going to be a great referral partner. Um, I'm going to, so the franchisor is going to help with those types of marketing efforts. Should you belong to a BNI group or a chamber of commerce or other networking group for your particular brand, to help with your grassroots marketing efforts and the boots on the ground? Are you going to launch a social media campaign to reach people? Are you going to have a targeted mailing approach to households? There's one of the pet care brands I love. They have access to credit card spending for people who invest in their animals, spend money at the big box pet stores and online pet food distributorships. So those are going to be very, very targeted for your marketing efforts for that particular pet care brand. So you're not hitting households who have a bunch of cats or
Exactly.
animals at all, because you want to spend wisely, because marketing is expensive, and
Mhm.
some people, they get a little bit surprised how much they have to spend their first year in marketing. But you got to launch and you got to spend a lot of money your first year to build that recurring revenue for people to keep coming back.
What financial benefits do franchisees gain compared to independent business owners?
Well, I think you can scale much more quickly. So sure, you have to pay an initial franchise fee to have the rights to invest and operate a particular franchise brand. But that franchise fee is really helping to support your launch team and your growth into the business, and future marketing efforts to grow the franchise system. But you're going to launch much faster if you're part of a franchise system rather than starting from scratch. So if you think about, if you're going to start a business from scratch, like I want to start, I don't know, my own pet walking business.
Okay.
And so I've got to come up with the name of my company and my
You do.
marketing materials. I've got to register my
Your
LLC.
website. Yeah.
I've got to do all these things, and then I might invite some friends or family to help me with those decisions. And then I've got to hire a marketing agency. And so I've got to invest all this money and all these resources to build my pet walking company. And it might have been much faster and quicker financially to launch through franchising, to get it going very quickly.
And what is, and I know, I'm sure it's probably different, Laura, for depending on which business you want to buy into, but how much is normally the franchise fee that you pay at the beginning?
They do vary. I would say on average, they're somewhere between $30 and $60,000 for a single territory. And then if you invest in multiple territories or multiple locations, you're going to get typically a discount for each additional territory or location that you invest in. There's also most franchisors recognize our veterans and offer a veteran, and some offer a first responder, minority discounts, um, medical personnel discounts. So I can help them navigate which of those brands might align with offering a percentage off of that franchise fee based on your background and the franchisors, um, what their system requires.
Let's talk about some cons of franchising. How does, okay, first of all, what are some of the cons when it comes to franchising or wanting to get into that business?
If you aren't willing to follow a system, franchising is not for you. Franchising is all about systems from the discovery process. People want to jump like, tell me how much I'm going to make. Well, you have to go through a few things before you can get to that phase and some people get frustrated. Well, franchising is probably not for you.
Mhm.
If you are super creative and you're like, I would like to do this and this and this and this and this, well, certainly you can talk to the franchisor about that, but particularly for your first year, you got to follow the guardrails of a proven, tried and true system that works. And then there might be an opportunity to explore some creativity, but
Mhm.
not usually initially. You do need to also meet the requirements of the franchisor. You can't just go out and buy a franchise like you would go buy a hamburger or a new pair of shoes. It's a mutual discovery process. So while you're looking at the franchisor to make sure you are a good fit for the franchisor, they're also looking at you as a potential franchisee for them. And they want to make sure that you are a good cultural fit, that you're going to have a good understanding of what your role and responsibility is as a franchisee, that you're going to be invested in this process of success. You're going to be available to have regular coaching calls with your business coach. You're going to work with your real estate executive to find space if it's a brick and mortar location. So if you're not willing to follow systems, franchising is not for you.
So I guess that kind of answers my next question for you, Laura. When is it best for a person to just go ahead and start their own independent business as opposed to going into the franchise business?
Well, ironically, I have a lot of people who have started their own business from scratch and they know how hard it was. So,
Yes.
their second business, I call it the second business easy button, they will look to franchising because it's so much easier. But on the
Hmm.
flip side, a lot of us have some great ideas. I thought about starting a business from scratch myself before I became a franchise consultant. Um, but I started pulling together my list of everything I needed to do. I have some friends who are business owners and consulted with them. So, I feel I'm a pretty savvy person, but I've never started a business myself before
Hmm.
without the support of somebody else. So, you've got to weigh the pros and cons. And I think you can always, talk to a franchise consultant initially. Not everybody I talk to invests in a franchise. Actually, most people I talk to don't end up investing in a franchise. So, weighing your options and then deciding, your path, your journey forward is terrific. But also on the flip side, I work with a lot of businesses that are very successful, independent, single or multiple locations, all corporate owned, and they have that independent business and they want to make it into a franchise. They want to expand nationwide. So I can also help guide those independent business owners on how do they build and grow their business and create a franchise system of creating their own franchise disclosure document, having an operations manual, an employee manual, guide to business ownership for franchisees, and how much do you charge to sell a franchise and charge for royalties. I've helped guide people in that journey as well.
You've spoken a little bit about whenever you're buying into a franchise, you got to stay within the guardrails, stay within the parameters. What are some of those guardrails, some of those parameters that the franchise company wants you to maintain? And I'm sure it's different depending on the business, but kind of the general ones maybe that you see throughout the franchise business world.
Well, you've got to do simple things like follow the branding guidelines. What are the colors of the business and the signage and the marketing materials so that they're consistent brand wide? Um,
Mhm.
you also need to attend training so you understand the soup to nuts aspects of the business, and you feel confident in implementing all of those in your particular market. Um, Other guardrails is, I show a lot of a packing and shipping franchise, or a couple of them. And I say to my candidates, you can do a lot of things in a packing and shipping franchise, from having PO boxes to packing and shipping, printing passports, notary, shredding, etc. But the franchisor is not going to let you do pedicures in the back room or sell hamburgers at the counter. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah.
So part of it is common sense of what those guardrails are. And then part of it is pretty defined in the business model to make sure that you are focusing on the most important revenue generating aspects of the business.
What are some of the risks involved with buying into a franchise?
Well, there's no guarantee in any business. So even if you're investing in a proven business model, sure,
Mhm.
the success rates are 90% in a franchise system versus an independent business has about a 40% success rate after 3 to 5 years. So the success rate is much higher. But you've got to do your due diligence ahead of time. Make sure that you're investing in a good franchise. There are some bad franchises out there, some ones that they just want to take your money. I've heard horror stories. Thankfully, I've never placed anybody in one of those kind of brands, but that's the other reason to work with a consultant to help you make sure that it is a reputable system that is going to support you and not just take your money and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
Um, you also need to make sure that you're looking at territory. So I recently spoke with candidates in rural USA, and one franchise brand said they were available in rural town USA, and then direct competitor, same business model, said it's too rural and they won't be successful as a business owner. So we've got to take a look at those cues and see, is the demographics going to support you? And then are you willing to follow systems and make tweaks and changes along the way to improve your likelihood of profitability for your business? But if you're gonna have somebody else run your business and you're going to take your eye off the ball and really not pay any attention to your business, your chance of failure is going to be higher than somebody who's really looking at the key performance indicators, managing your manager, managing the employees, looking at the marketing plan, really invested in their community and building a big business. Those are two very different franchise stories.
Right, right. What happens if the franchise goes out of business or files for bankruptcy?
Well, that's one of the things that's listed in the franchise disclosure document.
Okay.
Do they have any litigation against them? And anything from the franchisor to who's the CEO or the CFO, do they have any litigation or bankruptcies in their past? It has to
Right.
be listed in that franchise disclosure document. And we live in a litigious society, so there's going to be some, for the larger well-known franchise brands, there's going to be some sort of litigation in there usually, or bankruptcy of a franchisee who wasn't funded enough and they go out of business. So we look at that. We also look at item 20 in that franchise disclosure document. What does the growth path look like for that particular franchise system? Have they seen a steady increase? Have they seen explosive growth? And if it's explosive growth, how many of those franchisees are actually opening? Meaning, are they going into business, or are they just
Mhm.
simply signing an agreement, paying their franchise fee, never to be heard of again? And then also, how many closures or transfers are there? And it depends upon if it's a mature system. People retire, people are going to exit
Right.
and get out of there. But if it's a new system and there's a lot of transfers or closures of businesses, those are red flags. So I do everything I can to help um, my clients review that information to make a decision. Is this a good investment? Now, there are no guarantees. There are some big franchises that have gone under, that have had some litigation against them. And I keep my ear out there. I've had to have some tough conversations with my clients before. They're getting ready to get to the end and almost sign, and then there's something that comes up and I hear about something my candidate needs to know about because it might impact their investment in that particular business. And again, my role is to help make sure that you're making the best decision to have your best launch to success. I haven't placed anybody with a franchise that has gone under, so to speak, but there are some that do. So my goal is to hopefully help
Not have
people
that happen.
not have that happen. So.
Yes. Laura, okay, is there an out within, like, you buy into a franchise and after a year or two you decide I don't want to do this, or for medical emergency or something, life happens and you can no longer do this with the franchise? Is there an exit plan or an exit strategy built into the contracts?
So the pathway is usually to sell your business.
Okay.
You'll some franchisors will help with the sale of your
Mhm.
franchise business. Some won't. Some consultants can help, or a broker can help sell your business. But you've invested time and resources in your business. So I represent a number of resales, and people exit for all different reasons,
Okay.
for health, relocation, family issues. So most franchise agreements are for 10 years. Some are for 5, a couple are for 20, but most are for 10 years. And it's stated really clearly what that transfer or sale is going to look like in the franchise disclosure document and in the franchise agreement. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to have a franchise attorney review that so you understand what those out clauses might look like.
Right.
Um, so if life changes for all of
It
us. So
does.
2 years, I have to go take care of a sick relative in Denver, then what does my exit strategy look like? How can I get out of this business and move on to something else? And most people will sell it. So there might be a neighboring franchisee who will buy it from you, or you'll sell it on Biz Buy Sell or other business platforms. So there are ways to exit the system if life happens.
Laura, you have been a franchise consultant for the last 5 years. Of course, it started when you were a child with your parents' company. But what advice would you give someone that's listening to you right now, that's watching you, that is thinking about maybe franchising or buying into a franchise is for me? What advice would you give that person?
I would, start with your why. Why are you looking at becoming a business owner? There's all different kinds of reasons. You lost your job. They're making me go back into the office. The economy's uncertain, so I'd rather bet on myself.
Right.
And then talk to your spouse about your reasons for wanting to invest in a business. Involve them in a conversation. And then you certainly can go do some internet research, but clicking around, you're going to get a lot of annoying calls from a lot of
Yes.
people. So I would encourage you to find a franchise consultant. Most of us are not tied geographically. So, as an example, I work with people all over the US, Canada. I've even had clients in Jakarta and Bali and Indonesia.
Wow.
Um, but having somebody help, interview you and help you kind of narrow down your focus and think about brands that might not have otherwise been appealing. If you want to own one of those really famous franchises that you see on every corner, chances are the market is they're not available in your market if you see them right down the street from you. So
Mhm.
a consultant will help you look at territory and availability, can present similar like type franchises, or maybe take you in a different direction altogether. But just start thinking about what is your why, and then how much do you have that you feel comfortable investing in a business should you find the right one. Because just like I said earlier, you need to get pre-qualified when you're investing in a home.
Mhm.
You need to have some idea of how much you have available to invest in a franchise. And typically, um, best case, you have $50,000 or more cash available to invest in a business. There are some that we can look at funding is for $25,000 or more, but you do have to have skin in the game to qualify for an SBA loan. You could look at some other funding options. If you have a 401k, there's called a rollover for business startup that you can fund your franchise without IRS tax penalties. So
Ooh,
there's lots of other ways that we can chat through about funding your franchise. But I would say, what is your why? What is your motivation? And then talk with others, and then start your search. Looking and investing time into exploring franchising. It costs you time, but it doesn't cost you money until you find the right one, and then by then you're ready.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so Laura, as we get ready to close this conversation, what is your why? What is your intention with being in this space?
Back to the beginning of our conversation, one of my core values is changing lives, and I get to change lives through business ownership. It's very gratifying. So that's my why.
Excellent, excellent. And my final question for you, Laura, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Well, I have a whole list of powerhouses I'd love to have on, but two that come to mind are uh, Tony Taylor Harris. She's awesome networking phenom. She gets drastic results. Love her. And then I also love Jennifer Maggiore with Always This Good. She is a women's advisory business networker and helps support the growth of powerful women in business, being a powerful connector.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for being on the podcast. Again, you are the first person on the podcast in all of my 3 seasons to educate us about franchising, and you did just that.
Well, thank you so much for hosting me today. I appreciate it, Crystal.
Absolutely. And to my listeners, to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Laura's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.